Coming up on Serious Joy. Robbie Hunt is back with her monthly self-study hall. The topic this time, managing troublesome relationships during testy times. Live this Wednesday on siriusjoy.com.
Greetings. This Sunday, September 21st at about 3:54 Eastern Time, a Step 29 Grandmaster partial solar eclipse will unfold. It's a big opportunity that comes rare on Earth. It's an opportunity to become anything. On our upcoming show, I'll break it down for each of the 12 signs. Keep streaming. Hello, friends. Welcome, and thank you for clicking today. Welcome to Namaste Today and the Soul Horoscopes with your Zodiac weather. I'm your humble host, Christopher Witecki. I am the Sensei to Serious Joy. I'm the founder of the Step System, and basically I'm a friend here to people on Earth. I want to help us all get along and live what I call serious joy, which is from the heart and purely from our heart's desires. Right now, we're in a very interesting moment, I have to say. Things are going to be changing really quickly. We're about to have a final solar eclipse in a series of three lunar events. This will be the second eclipse. And if you have been watching for a while, you know we've been leading up to a grand transformation. It's going to be a powerful one. It's going to be one, I think, that changes what life becomes. I think we may not recognize our life or the way we live in about 2 years, but this was the breaking point, and this eclipse is the big push. So for each of 12 signs, we'll talk about in your soul horoscopes where it's going to affect you and the other changes that are happening. But first, if you don't mind, as a friendly reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, please be kind and do subscribe. Hit the bell button so you're notified. And if you're watching on any other platform, if you'd be so kind as to leave a comment. Tell us what's going on with you and what's important to you, and we'll be in touch. Well, friends, it's now time for our sun signs and the headlines. And there's only one thing to talk about this week, and that is, I think, the solar eclipse. It's basically us echoing through history's mysteries, really. This solar eclipse is interesting because it's a Step 29 Virgo, which, by the way, is the highest vibration you can get as far as from an earthly perspective. 29 nets to an 11, which is Virgo, which nets to a 2, which is a Cancer, but you don't really net that far when you stay at a Virgo 11. In other words, Virgos are on top of reality, literally, even in the step system. This eclipse has happened before, though, and the population has made different changes. In fact, some research we see about in the last 60 years, about 3 times where this step number was in the high step or the high step 20s of this eclipse. Going back real quickly, just to give you an idea of what may be coming, in 1968, that was the one the farthest back we can go to at the moment, the eclipse hit September 22nd, 3 months before that. So the time before that of this 29, Martin Luther King was shot, Jr., that is, and also in Memphis on April 4th, remember, creating riots all over hundreds of cities. National Guard was called in. It was a huge, huge uproar of humanity. And then June 5th, Robert Kennedy was shot in LA running for the president. He was trying to win the California ticket primary. He died the next day. And that fueled massive protests and convention chaos as well. So what we can see here is that on or around this eclipse, it is usually creating a reality check, so to speak, because 29 is the degree that rules reality, and Virgo is what rules reality. So this is like the golden key to reality. It seems that when we have a solar eclipse giving it extra energy, we see collapses in some of the fundaments of reality, things that we thought that might be around for a long time. Now, after that eclipse in 1968, we at the same year, we had a lot of Vietnam tense offensive happening. There was aftermath happening. That was still in the headlines. And President Johnson actually announced he would not run again after all this happened in the shakeup. So a lot of major changes and a change of fate. The next time was September 23rd, 87. And I won't get so much detail, but before was the Iran-Contra affair with Ollie North testifying and Reagan also being grilled in Congress. That was before. After the eclipse, it was the Black Monday of the big stock exchange, the big Dow stock exchange crash plunged 23% right after, the biggest single day drop ever, taking global markets and sparking recession fears. So the most close to this one was in 2006. Just before the eclipse at 29, Saddam Hussein was executed for crimes against humanity, of which we found no evidence, remember? And the other side of the exercise, North Korea started firing nuclear tests and housing mortgage market crisis started to build. And of course, we had that crash in 2007. In essence, the 29 eclipse will actually bring a lot of challenges that are going to rock our system of our entire world. And these line up with a lot of crisis assassinations, typically, market crashes, executions among wars that we've been going on, and basically change and perhaps acceleration of a hidden agenda. Of course, we don't quite know what that hidden agenda is, but we might be putting them together even as of now. Fascinating enough, here we are, once again, in Step 29 eclipse. And what do we have? Well, last week, at least one political assassination of the, actually, interestingly enough, the millennials actually generation, but that was, again, seemingly on point for what these eclipses do. Well, we'll dive into what that means for you, but let's first take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. Today's zodiac weather spans from Saturday, November 20th to Friday, November 26th, 2025, and is proudly sponsored by Art for the Soul. Chelsea Duello is a self-taught intuitive artist who experienced a spiritual awakening during the pandemic. Today, her paintings are a visual representation of where science and spirituality meet to create art. She also offers creative workshops with unique art pieces that serve as an anchor for your own spiritual journey and your evolution. Learn more at artforthesoul.art. That's artforthesoul.art. Batten down the hatches and buckle up your seatbelts, my friends. This weekend is the eclipse weekend. It will land on shores Sunday afternoon around 4 p.m. Eastern Time, but it's going to dominate the consciousness of the entire weekend and the week beyond. Let's drill down. On Saturday, it's sunny and directed. Step 27 tells us that Mars rules the day, male energy pushing you to push, go forward, take the first 2 or 3 steps necessary for what you committed to the day prior on step 26. The moon in Virgo makes you hyper aware of every detail, and in some ways, this is you getting one last chance to learn or patch things up with anything you did in the Virgo season. This is the countdown to the apex. You could further expect tests of self-love, particularly the afternoon. That's when we have Venus square Uranus retrograde at 1 degree, calling on you to embody self-love principles into your daily routines, particularly with the way you speak to yourself, says Uranus in Gemini. The root intention of the day is I become purposeful, and the affirmation is I am aligning to the highest reality possible. On Sunday, it's sunny and eventually resolved. This is the day of the eclipse. Step 28 opens the day and is the ruling step of the day, which nets tend to I manifest. Therefore, by committing to an emotional tone, you are manifesting things. Deep within your tone, through the night as you were sleeping, the Sun of Virgo opposed Saturn retrograde, which means when you woke up this morning, you might have had a subtle argument going on within yourself. Be sure to bring peace to those internal conflicts before the apex, which happens at 3:54 p.m. Eastern Time at step 29 Virgo. 29 energy will put a major test on top of all of your plans, and it's about responding to your feelings until you get through the storm. The root intention of today is I become deliberate, and the affirmation, I am determined to rise to the occasion. Indeed. Now turn your attention to the 5-day weekday forecast of Monday through Friday and the aftermath of the eclipse. On Monday, it's sunny and proud. Step 29 rules the day, which means we are still in the eclipse energy and carrying it out. 29 nets to an 11, the I become state of awareness itself. Therefore, this is a day where you must become the solution now. Be it, and it will be here with you. The moon in Libra threatens you to feel in balance or out of balance with others. And a couple of other issues that change through the night, changing the tone. Overnight, Mars went into Scorpio, really sharpening the bite or the sting of anything where a line is drawn. And around 2:19 p.m. Eastern Time, the Sun will shift into Libra, cooling off all the energy. The root intention is I become proficient, and the affirmation is I have no choice but to be authentically me. On Tuesday, it's sunny and indecisive. Step 0 is the Pluto step, bringing a zeroing out and causing a space between Virgo and Libra. It's also the first invisible step to Libra season. This means Pluto and personal boundaries are what rules the day. You might find some inflammation around something that was trespassed or disrespected as of late. The moon will shift from Libra into Scorpio, so feelings might go down for a deep plunge. You might feel things sort of underneath the surface lurking, and that would be the case because early in the morning, the Sun in Libra will oppose Neptune retrograde at 0 Aries. This opposition opens up the door for out-of-this-world galactic contact and also channeling. And then late tonight, the Sun in Libra will trine Uranus retrograde, calling you to innovate your language with yourself to accommodate the new world. The root intention is, I receive guardianship. The affirmation is, I am creating space for my inner sanctuary. On Wednesday, it's cloudy with a chance of storms. Step 1 means the Sun rules the day and the heart is wanting to come out to play. Energetically, the moon in Scorpio may make things a little quiet or cold or standoffish. A couple of things happening. The Sun in Libra has trined Pluto overnight, so you may be feeling death in the air. And early in the morning, Mars in Scorpio squares Pluto at 1 Aquarius, meaning it's time to step up or step out. In other words, change your boundaries and let yourself receive love already. So the chance of storms is probably if you deny that self-love. Otherwise, the sun will come out and you'll want to play. The root intention is, I receive self-love. And the affirmation is, I am leaning into self-love in order to accept what is. On Thursday, it's cloudy and clearing. Step 2 means the moon will rule the day, and the moon will be in Scorpio for the entire day. Thus, you are drawing emotional boundaries. You'll be withdrawn, probably quiet, not necessarily being out in the public. It's a rest day if you can pull that off, and if not, your emotions may need some extra TLC. The root intention of the day is I receive solace, and the affirmation is I am working the tough to get to the love. And then on Friday, it's cloudy with a chance of fears. Step 3 means Jupiter rules the day, so it's a learning day, particularly believing in yourself in a greater way. The moon starts in Scorpio, then shifts into Sagittarius. That's when things come about, crossing the fears there and crossing Black Moon Lilith. This is a day where you're going to learn about yourself and learn about what your needs really are, which then will be followed by a breakthrough weekend. The affirmation of the day is I am accepting the peace, and the root intention is to receive belief in myself. And we're back. Well, this week is really about this eclipse. I think everything we do harbors on how we respond to the eclipse. And each of your horoscopes coming up, I'll talk about what you can do for your sun sign and your rising sign. First, though, a little announcement. I have an important webinar coming up next month called New World Order. That's spelled KNEW World Order. You can go there to sign up and go on the wait list right now at newworldorder.xyz, which are the generations that are caught up in this. But I did some astrological research, and I've also recorded some extra things where I'm looking to the depth of what is unfolding here. And I don't believe it's a new world order in the sense of a group of businessmen in this lifetime planning something new. I argue nothing is new. It's always something we once knew. And I'm going to give a map for the next 18 months of how to navigate your life, then a workshop after how to look at your chart and see where the hot spots are so you get through to the new world order that you knew, not something completely different, NEW, and new. All right, friends. With that, let's move on to our soul horoscope.
Hi, I'm Lisa Brazelton, the architect of the Chamber of Wealth Consciousness program and the founder of Sage Prosperity Partners. Are you ready to break free from old money stories and belief systems? This fall, there are 2 cohorts which I will be facilitating, and I would love for you to join me. In this program, I will help you open up the light of divine prosperity. There are limited spaces available. You can see the link below, and Serious Joy members will receive a discount. I look forward to seeing you.
And now on to our soul horoscopes, our favorite and the oldest part of our show. Well, this is the final week of Virgo. We enter into Libra this week. Our theme for the month has been pulling apart and coming together. Well, we've already pulled apart. That was a lunar eclipse in Pisces a couple weeks ago at 15 degrees Pisces, literally splitting us in half to some degree, and at least splitting the country up in half, also with the energy that came from the events. Now, that said, this week, after being split, we come back together with a solar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse on Sunday at 29 degrees Virgo. 29 is a Grand Master degree, which means we will push the envelope of what reality has been. You could say that we are expanding reality to fit the new high vibration, that we don't have the bodies of 5D, but we have the intention of 5D. And so this expansion means that life will grow in all directions. Now, that said, after that huge expansion, we dip down into Libra, a very quiet energy, and we get quiet with ourselves and we start to explore our relationship to ourselves. Now that life's about to expand, are we treating ourselves on the right level? And that's really the theme of the week. Now, by right level, we're talking about self-love. That is the theme of the entire year, with all these planets having hovered at step 1. We'll talk about those in more depth. But the point here is that as of that point in Libra, it's time to raise the self-love, and all the events of the week sort of demand that in different ways. For one, on Tuesday, the sun will oppose Neptune at 0 degrees. This is now raising the self-love to reach what your spiritual mission is and the new ego is meant to be. So energetically now taking your ego to the next level. Then the sun will trine Uranus in Gemini, which means now your thinking about yourself must rise to the occasion. Then the sun will trine Pluto in Aquarius, which means your vibration must rise to the occasion, all on step 1, the self-love principle. So the last bit of notice will be that Mars will square Pluto, meaning that there's going to be a literal cut or change of the way you treat yourself. The end of the week, really the end of the week being on late Wednesday, a Mars squaring Pluto means that there's a huge change in our life and a huge change in boundaries with ourselves. So what you're going to realize is that you've got to change the way you draw lines with yourself to make all this flower and to bloom. But now it's time to look at this, how it meets for you, friends. So each of the 12 horoscopes ahead, I'll be talking about these points and helping to understand where your life is basically growing and how your relationship to yourself will have to change as a result. And as always, let's start with our Aries. Aries, you are literally living the dream here. Your lifestyle is now expanding to a greater depth and higher resolution. Most of this is to meet the fact that you have new spiritual principles embedded into your consciousness. You are the walking example of the enlightened ego. You are now taking your ego and putting it into new directions and new ways of life. And that's because you now incorporate either faith or spirit or religion or some sort of spirituality that was not there before. I've actually had a couple of readings with Aries in the last couple of months and last month, and I was astounded that they're being so honest and frank about supernatural, past lives, things that I don't normally hear Aries talk about. So I've seen this expansion in you. It's really compelling, and I'm so glad you're part of our wacky team now. Now, that said, with the sun in Libra, it means that your relationship to yourself must change. Yes, your relationships should also change, but that will come in due time as we climb up the steps of Libra. First, we have to change your mirage and how you relate to yourself. Now, at this moment with the sun opposing, that moment the sun opposes Neptune in Aries, it means that your mirage means you're going to have to be open to also allowing your faith to choose your behavior. And not just your behavior, but the way you treat yourself. So allowing faith to determine how you treat yourself, allowing spirit to determine how you treat yourself, which means, yes, you're going to get away with it a lot more. You know, a lot of Aries have an issue with beating themselves up as a means of self-discipline. And that just will not work in the new era. In the new era, you must treat yourself as good as you treat the thing you love the most. After all, you should be the thing you love the most, truly love. So behavior must also follow. So there's a turning point when the sun opposes Neptune, I think, in the realization that you've got to treat yourself better. And then, of course, the sun continues up through Libra, which means you get to the I believe point. But before you do that, the sun will then, of course, trine Pluto. Now, trining Pluto means that your relationship to yourself also means that you must rise to the occasion of the way you want to be treated in society. So you either are treating yourself in society a certain way, but not following that privately, or you're treating yourself privately a certain way and you're not commanding that to happen in society. One of the two is disconnected. In each of the cases that doesn't work, it's probably that you're not loving yourself in that area. So you're not loving yourself enough before you go out into the world, or you're not loving yourself enough in your private life with yourself, or both. It could be actually both as well. Now, when that happens, you're going to see that there's also a square from Pluto to Mars. And what that means is that it will come down to, in essence, that your lines with yourself have to change. You have certain lines with yourself where you will trigger whether or not you do something or don't something, lines that prevent you from doing things, lines that let you do things that you know are not the most loving things for yourself. And what the astrology is saying this week for the Aries is it all comes down to those lines with yourself. If you're willing to find a new way with different lines to get what you want, and do it with more secure lines, more solid lines inside yourself, in other words, rules you never break, then you'll find that all this other activity in the world just happens on its own. If not, you're going to find that you are dealing with the aftermath of a poor boundary. Taurus. Oh, Tauruses, this is a fun time, and I have to say I'm living it myself. You, of course, are working on your personal dreams this month. The sun in Virgo means that you're working on your inner child relationship to yourself, your relationship to creativity, your relationship to personal dreams and manifestation, and the big dreams of your life, which I call the golden egg or the diamond egg of your life. That said, you are now going to raise the stakes and the resolution of what those dreams mean to you and will mean to the world both. It comes from really incorporating into your dreams, having fulfilled your karma in society. You no longer are here for society. You used to be, in most cases, feeling indebted to society or wanting to prove yourself in society or some other karma with society, but that's now over. you're now going to be in society according to what your heart wants to share, and only what your heart wants to share. So your priorities and the details of your projects are going to be changing, and the solar eclipse is going to give a giant boost to whatever that dream happens to be. So as we come to step 29 and we have the eclipse, a gigantic boost of your personal dreams coming true and moving forward, meaning that you're now implementing a new karmic relationship to society based on no karma or intentions that you've always had to help the world. Now, as the sun moves into Libra, it means it's now time to find balance with you and your health. You and your body must be incredibly tight and work together like a marriage. In fact, your marriage comes down to your health. A Taurus will always become better to themselves through their health. So by being there for yourself and your health, this means nutrition, this means sleep, breaks, equal work, work lifestyle stuff that I'm not good at all. This is important because as you move into the sun in daily life must be now rebalanced to the new intentions of personal dreams and whatnot. You must re-architect your lifestyle to be in harmony and balance, but also to keep your overall life in balance. Now, this all comes from the fact that we have Neptune now in Aries, which means that Taurus faith is going to a higher level. Tauruses have always worked intimately with Mother Earth and Gaia to manifest things with a snap. However, there is higher realms to be incorporated now, and you'll be changing your ego. And basically on the inside of yourself, let's say you're not here for Earth per se, you're here for the universe. And so you're taking to that galactic level. Now, as the sun moves into Libra, it also means the trine to Pluto and Aquarius means that the way you approach your career, your legacy, and every decision must be on a higher level. You must decide from a higher point of view. And this, of course, varies per sign. We'll get into that another time. But for you, it means that perhaps your decisions are looking out for your heart. Your decisions are certainly looking out for your daily lifestyle and your health. And that means that you cannot sacrifice anyone for any other. Now, at the same time, we have, like I said earlier, the Mars squared to Pluto at 0 degrees, Mars in Scorpio. And Mars in Scorpio is saying it's now time to make cuts to personal boundaries you have with yourself and personal limits you set with yourself. For instance, how much time do you give yourself really? Do you give yourself the same amount of time that you give the world? Or are you one of those Tauruses that never get anything done because all you do is give yourself time? And you don't carve out time for you and the world. So it's going to be coming down to where you draw the lines with time and yourself and how much love you're actually giving yourself to change and transform yourself toward that personal dream. Gemini, this transformation for you is the expansion of your emotional foundation footprint. So you have used so many details and so many things in life to say to yourself, I feel grounded, I feel good. And whatever those details were, they're all upgrading now to higher vibration. You're picking new details out that bring more security, and maybe even restructuring the way you look at emotional security altogether. Depends on the last 30 days and what you've been changing. Now, all these changes are a result of feeling more power in the world. All the healing at Pisces was clearing the karma of career, legacy, poor choices, abandoned father, being the abandoning father, all those issues of authority and the consequences and karma that come with authority. You've been basically laying your head low, feeling guilty for something that's not even in this life since you were born. But that's gone now. And so now you're not having to support this guilty or not feeling adequate or not feeling fairly treated, whatever it was in your career. Now you're not starting to, now you no longer have to emotionally found that. You don't have to care for that anymore. So that's a huge burden that's off your chest. At the same time, it makes you say that perhaps part of the career problems were the fact that you weren't well-founded. You didn't feel good going in the door. You didn't feel good actually going out the door, and you didn't feel good about what you were doing or where you were headed. Now, with that said, this solar eclipse says, all right, this is the family, the foundation, the emotional security that you need to be founded for whatever your personal dreams are, whatever your fate legacy is. The problem has been, to some degree, that you didn't come from a good home. You weren't treating yourself appropriately in that regard. Then the sun goes into Libra, and this begs the question, is your heart really getting what it wants? And before you answer with your mind, let me ask your heart, is your heart really getting what it wants? Because Geminis and Gemini risings tend to ignore their heart and think about things they love, which is not the same. Thinking about something you love is not talking to your heart. It's actually thinking about your heart, which makes your heart happy in the background, but it's not a pure connection to the heart. You must communicate to the heart. I feel that Geminis lack communication, ironically, with the heart. I think it's instantaneous. I think you give yourself the short side of the stick. I think you're more interested in the outcome than you are in putting the energy into it. So that said, this is going to be a huge transformation. And when the sun opposes Neptune in Aries, it means that you have a fresh start, a fresh new day in society. People who meet you in society now are never going to know the old you at all. You're going to reinvent yourself entirely in the way the world thinks of you, what you do in society, and the role you play. And so with that said, it's all going to be based on what your heart really wants. If you follow what your heart wants, then yes, indeed, you're going to find yourself extremely happy in this next transformation of the new Aries that's being born. Now, with all that said, there's the trine to Pluto and Aquarius, which means that for this to happen, you have to love yourself on a higher level And you have to believe in yourself on a higher level. And that would mean lots of things, like giving yourself the benefit of doubt, not questioning yourself when you already know it to be true, listening to your heart and feelings to validate information instead of just facts and figures. So there's a whole bunch of aspects to raising your belief in yourself and the structure of the belief in yourself. Plus, Pluto squaring Mars and Scorpio says at the same moment, it's very important too, that you recognize you're going to have to make a lot of cuts, all right? And these cuts have to do with basically how you live in the moment. That your relationship to your body and what you put in, what you put out, and whether or not you care for yourself, the boundaries there are not good. They don't have high love, self-love values there. And so what you're going to find is it's time to make some changes in the way you start and stop with your body, invest in your health or not, and the way you respond to your body when something comes up. So it looks like boundaries around the boundary lead to your transformation of your emotional security. Cancers. Cancers, believe it or not, for you to really change and come into the new era and manifest the new reality that you seek to see, you have to make a huge transformation in your mental real estate. You are expanding your reality in your head. You're getting new levels of thinking, and you're letting yourself out of old trap levels as well. At the same time, you may surprise yourself in channeling something that's far beyond your understanding and learning that way, that you download in order to come up with great ideas and then process them. Nonetheless, this eclipse is a huge investment in your thinking ability. And the astrology shows that although you're very good at emotion, part of the reason that you're being held back with self-nurturing is because of your mind is limiting your options. Now, this is all due to the fact that you faced your karma with belief structure. Cancers and Cancer risings have been struggling for lifetimes to dark ages with their beliefs being messed with. Whether they marry someone, they're forced to adopt that person's belief structure, or they had a church religious upbringing where they had to be good to their family and good to the church. But most cases, relationships affecting them because they were codependent in relationships. So now you believe for yourself, and now your karma is that you'll follow what you believe and follow your principles. That all said, this is why you need a new way of thinking, because your thinking is really meant to, has been designed to police the old belief structure, not give freedom to the new belief structure, which is you can believe in what you want. Now, then the sun will move into Libra, and it means it's time to care for your feelings differently. One thing is you'll be able to look at your feelings in your mind and take it with a bit more higher resolution. Now that you have this expanded thinking and this belief, the freedom of your beliefs, now you can really look at what you truly need emotionally, not necessarily what's the right thing to do, or what your mom told you to do, or the way you were raised as a man or raised as a woman. All these other details that really just don't matter. What comes down to is what feels good and what doesn't, what made you feel better and what didn't. So with the sun in Libra, this changes a whole new transformation of really nurturing yourself to the best level, that Cancers will finally take their own talent and apply it to themselves when it comes to emotional nurturing. Wow, that is a new era, right? And with the sun opposing Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, it means that at the same time, it's a brand new day for you as a career. I don't care what you've been labeled as or what your resume says. With 0 degree Aries Neptune, it says we're in a totally new story now. People will never even know you in that old world. It'll be like knowing you in grade school. So that means it's now time to come from a good home, to be well cared and nurtured before you go out into the world. So that you attract things that are of your equal, and you attract things that you deserve and things that you really need, because your emotions are cared for to begin with. Now, the sun also trining Pluto at 0 degrees, 1 degree, excuse me. This means that you at the same time must keep your vibration high with all your boundaries. Your boundaries with yourself have to be 5D. They cannot be 3D. That to look at all the different chess games going on at the same time and make one boundary for yourself that meets all those criteria, particularly your boundary around loving yourself. You are real tight-lipped and actually pretty old school when it comes to self-love. A, you usually tend to give it only as a reward to yourself. B, you come last out of everyone in the room. So, as far as boundaries with self, I don't think they've been very healthy for the Cancers. So, but if you change those boundaries with yourself, there's one other thing to change, and that's the square to Mars in Scorpio, which means that ultimately you'll have to change at the same time. Let me see here. I'm thinking about it. Oh, excuse me. You have to change at the same time your personal dreams, that you deserve love in the first place, that your inner child can have what it wants. That's going to the deep depth of your childhood, saying, hey, not only do you have to care for yourself, but you got to change the way you were loved, because the way you were loved as a child was not adequate for what your personal dreams are. So it's this whole dynamic, basically, of cutting those dreams. And what it comes down to for Cancers is, if you open up and protect your inner child and what it wants, then you will have all these other areas of your life just bloom. Leos, you are making a huge imprint on the potential to manifest abundance. You see, Leos have always been tied by so many beliefs and contracts and connections. Being the stars of the show has often meant that their business dealings are incredibly complicated with all sorts of walks of life, because their loyalties are not always based on the smartest decision for the business. It's usually based on heartfelt connections, which is what it's all about with you. And in the old days, it was based on boosting your ego and your shine, and not necessarily at the core. Well, now you're getting a whole new store, so to speak, a new storefront in which to sell things, where you in the door, things are a bit more organized and streamlined according to what your needs are. And you're focusing on the details of high resolution success versus, a huge high resolution scope of what you're doing and low resolution of actual payout. Now, that solar eclipse in Virgo is a huge investment for you to make money, just so you know, and should be taken advantage of at every cost that you can. This energy will take your ad farther, take your business farther, take everything farther if you're aligned to listen and respond to your feelings and the needs of your feelings. At the same time, this opposition is due to the fact that you've pretty much graduated your issues with personal boundaries. And that has been all of your karma. You drew the wrong boundary with yourself or someone else or both. And now that this energy has cleared through Pisces, it's now time to plan what your transformation is going to be. And your transformation can be anything, frankly, because you are no longer afraid of transitioning. Before, you're afraid of facing those boundaries, facing those sexual issues, facing those intimacy issues, facing the issues of loss, of grief, whatever has really broken your intimacy or trust issues. And so now that they're all healed, well, you can take a risk again. You can do things you weren't willing to do before, or you might venture into territory you've never tried as a result. So it's a powerful eclipse of boosting in money and ability, frankly, because you're less limited with personal boundaries. Now, that said, as the sun goes to Libra, it means it's time to think about yourself differently entirely. Your self-talk is inadequate. You are playing the old script without any doubts here. And as the sun opposes Aries, also comes a time where you will rewrite your own history. Aries is 0 degrees, Neptune is 0 degrees. Aries says it's a total new belief structure now for the Leos. You're basically rewriting the Bible, the dictionary, and the thesaurus at the same time. And you're updating according to the new resolution of your flexibility, of Pisces, frankly, and having faced your karma. You have much more faith in yourself. The sun thinks it's even hotter than it ever has been. And so now you're ready to really shine and twinkle people out of this universe. That said, we have to also pay attention to the Pluto trine. As the sun is in Libra, it trines Pluto in Aquarius, which means that your relationship to yourself has got to be 5-dimensional. That you've got to be working on yourself in the future, in the past, in the present, in your body, and in your heart of all times. And this high-dimensional, high-frequency self-care, also with Pluto squaring Mars, must be reconciled, okay, with Mars and Scorpio. What that is your way that you treat your feelings. In fact, it all comes down to, with Mars squaring Pluto, that the boundaries have to change is around your emotions. Are you there for your emotions? Are you always there? Do you care ahead of time for your emotions? Where are the lines and boundaries with how you treat yourself emotionally? Do you make yourself suffer and walk 2 miles and with hurt feet before you take off your shoes and change them? What are the boundaries when it comes to self-care? If you transform your boundaries around your feelings, it looks like the astrology says everything else in your life will naturally light up. And that includes, of course, your pocketbook, because that solar eclipse is the biggest punch to money I've seen for you guys in years. Virgo. Oh, Virgo, this is exciting for y'all. I remember when I started reporting on Virgos that I kind of always had a little bit of a dis-solar with you because you were a pill to work with just all the time. But you, in honesty, were having a hard time because you honestly try so hard to be good to people and you try so hard to be perfect. And that's with your heartfelt desire to really just shine and show what perfection can be. Because you don't usually take the credit or take the compliments when they do finally come. But in all that craziness, you ultimately had problems with who you were and what you were to do or not do, because in the background, you were messed up in relationships. That's where karma has been for Pisces, all these relationships. Well, this solar eclipse in Virgo is literally the reboot of your character. You're getting a new skin, new clothing, new hair wardrobe. If you were an avatar, be a brand new high-resolution avatar. The character you're becoming now has new features and new possibilities and is not scared by ghosts or past life karma. And so that's what this eclipse is. It's a holy grail celebration of Virgo 2.0 or 3.0 or 5.6, whatever edition you happen to be on. Now, with all that said, it's due to the fact that you did face your karma in relationships and long-term partnerships. And in this eclipse, you are setting for good what the policy will be in LTRs and all walks of relationships. And because you're a Virgo, you're getting away with a lot of cool stuff that most people don't get away with. For instance, working with your brother who also happens to be, the boss of your kids. I mean, just complicated relationships that most people couldn't pull off, but you have the resolution to track it all. Now, when the sun goes in Libra, it's time for a raise. And guess what? That raise begins with how you treat yourself. So your relationship to yourself is usually the one that's throwing you under the bus. You are underestimating. You are not giving yourself what you are worth. I don't know what you're afraid of, but it doesn't matter. Fear should not be what controls you. And so now it's time to raise the way you treat yourself, the way you value yourself. The reason why Virgos love compliments is because they never give them to themselves, okay? All the other signs know that that's how you have to do it. And it has to be stuff you genuinely care about. And give yourself the props. You may not be happy with 10 things in yourself, but you're probably happy with 20 or 30, and you're spending time and energy on the things you're not happy with. You got to flip that upside down, go to the other side of the scale, start investing in what you like and not pay a little less attention to what you don't like. Now, what I just described, those lines between where you draw the line, that's what the opposition to Neptune is for you. The Sun-Neptune opposition is, first of all, if you've been delirious and not paying attention to your money as it relates to how you treat yourself, whoa, well, hello, good morning. So now it's time to realize that where you draw the line with yourself turns into how valuable you feel. And so if you, for instance, draw the line after 2 cookies, you're probably gonna feel really good, that you didn't have 10 or whatever it might have been. And the same token, when you let yourself have a compliment from someone's done an amazing job and you say thank you and you take it to heart and you don't argue with yourself, that too will raise your self-worth. So the boundary drawing is where you're brand new at, realizing that boundaries can do everything for you in the world simply by where you draw the line with yourself or don't. And that turns into the response you get from the people in the first place. Now, that said, the Sun in Libra does mean that it will trine then to Pluto in Aquarius at 0 degrees. This means that at the same time, your daily life has got to be higher vibration and your body has to feel that high vibration. So a lot of Virgos are behind in their self-care. You are the masters of health and you ought to be the best looking, most in shape, most incredibly shining, bright objects on the planet. You rule the body. You should be stunning in every way. I know that I think you are in many cases, by the way. This is me judging you. This is me talking to you, talking about all the things you don't like. So if that's the case, you're the genius. It's time for you to raise the vibration. So you have to put self-love in the moment, in all of your self-care. And this means literal ritual with the body and your health, nutrition, etc. At the same time, though, of course, we have to look at the square to Pluto from Mars in Scorpio. And interestingly enough, this energy for you, and it goes back into Libra too, but this energy for you has to do with the way you think about yourself. At the end of the day, your lines about what you will say and won't say to yourself are ancient, and I don't think very high vibration, and I don't think very inspiring. I think they round down. At the end of the day, there's a negative filter in your head that's constantly under these old rules and old boundaries of what's appropriate and not appropriate with yourself. So the moral of the story is, if you transform the way you talk to yourself, everything about your new version of you is going to come into bloom. Libra, you're making a very peculiar change that I don't think most people even see. And that is that you are now crafting a new higher resolution connection to God consciousness. This could be an understanding of how the universe works. This could be a new model of spirituality that you've adopted. This could be that you've recently started talking to the dead or channeling from angels or channeling from other nations out there in the galaxy. Whatever the case may be, it's now different. This is a hardware upgrade, really, for Libras to accept a higher signal of spirituality. Not that you couldn't already. It's just that you're a person, strangely enough, that open to everything. When it comes to God, you kind of always have wanted proof. Well, now you've gotten your proof experientially, maybe not scientifically, and you're ready to stand in the moment. Now, all this comes from the fact that you've been struggling with daily life. All of your karma has come out in the daily day, in things that happen at work, happen in the gym, happen with your nutrition, happen with your lifestyle. All of your basically life has been riddled with karma, making you maybe feel picked on by God, or perhaps you thought that you had bad karma. Truth is that part of it was that your connection to spirit was not there high enough. The other part of it is that your karma just plays out through your daily life. But the good news is it's over. So this new faith in yourself also represents the end of all those things that happen in daily life that kept you back, and a new approach spiritually to daily life at large. And it's your friend, and it's the expression of who you really are. Now, when the sun goes into your sign, it does mean that it's your birthday. And this birthday means that it is now time to reinvent the way you treat yourself. I don't care how good you are at diplomacy with this nation and that, or this kind of culture to that culture, or how you kept your parents together when you were a kid. It doesn't matter. The universe says that you are not treating yourself on the same level, period. Okay? It's in the smallest, most subtle responses to yourself. Whether you give yourself a smirk in the mirror, or you tell yourself, I doubt it, or you call yourself stupid real quick. Those are all poor ways to address a person. So the Sun in Libra means a revolution in your self-behavior. At the same time, this means the very beginning, like a brand new notebook on what relationships are, including the relationship to yourself. You're going to redefine relationships in the next 7 to 8 years as Neptune and Saturn both climb up through Aries. That means you're going to change everything you've decided about what relationships are and make it something new. You are literally upgrading the entire collective on the way we must relate going forward to be able to pull off this age of Aquarius. Now, with that said, we have to also look at the fact that as the sun goes into Libra, the sun will be trining Pluto in Aquarius, and of course right now is retrograde. Pluto in Aquarius says you actually, the universe says, that for things to happen the way you are hoping for, your personal self-love has got to go much higher. And I know you think you love yourself because in principle, you won't destroy yourself or sacrifice yourself, but that, my dear, is not love. Love is giving yourself more than you ever wanted, more than you ever imagined, and having a joy that is just basically drunk with euphoria because you're getting everything you want and more, and on levels you never imagined. So it is time for Libras to pursue full-time their personal self-love and make it the first priority in their life. Now, the square to Mars in Scorpio says the only way you're going to do that, though, is to change the boundaries around values. You must change it to be a valuable thing to invest in your child, to be a valuable thing to spend lots of time exploring your heart, to be a valuable thing to just think about you and cultivate you. See, these values about what is valuable and what's not valuable is incorrect. You have based your values on appeasing others. It's now time to base your values on loving yourself. And that, my friend, will bring the bloom in Libra. Scorpios, you are in an interesting position right now with this eclipse because I think Scorpios are finally moving into their social power. The social ambition is what's going to change. This eclipse at 29 Virgo says that you are now going to redefine the complexity of how you see yourself out there in the world. And you do overanalyze it. That's the problem. You're oversensitive to boundaries and you overanalyze public. And so as a result, you sort of paint yourself into corners you haven't been able to get out of. The good news is you have finally healed what was important, that your heart deserves the best. The Pisces energy that was going on with Saturn and Neptune was you facing your karma, which is all around broken heart. Scorpios have broken heart karma like crazy, whether it's the loss of a child or a creative project or the love of their life or being chosen second or whatever the case is. As a result, Scorpios have become of much more service and softness to the world, but have also been less happy. And so you've manifested these complex situations in society with friends and whatnot that were based on the complexity of your broken heart. What this means is this solar eclipse is a whole new deal with you in the world. And don't worry about your resume or anything else. None of that's going to follow you. None of those things will matter. You're going to start brand new when it comes to your place in the world. And this is because at the same time, you're going to start brand new with the Aries energy, which is how you live in the moment. That gets us to Libra. With the sun in Libra now moving this week, it's now time to have a different, more balanced approach to faith versus fear. The Scorpios have mostly been walking around the earth with their stinger up. And that's because they've been prepared for the world to get them. You were born literally on edge, ready to be attacked. This is your past life karma in the dark ages that mostly this is about. And so you've really had an unfair relationship to yourself where you have weighed on the negative or weighed on that let's just be cautious or cautionary, then weighing on the potential that it most likely will work because I'm a badass. And because you don't round up and say it most likely will work because I'm a badass is why you don't get the things that you really want or to the level you deserve. So you're literally telling the universe, I probably won't anyways. And the universe is like, okay. And so it is. So with the sun in Libra and opposing Neptune in Aries, it's time for you to realize this is a whole new lifestyle. Forget everything you've ever lived. Forget every job you've ever had. Forget every neighbor you've had, every lifestyle experience. All of it was a drama just for you to understand who you are. You now have a fresh start. Do not assume the world is anything, because you create the world in your lifestyle based on your faith and all these other principles. So it's a new era in that regard, period. And that is what Neptune and Aries is going to do. Bring Scorpios into a different life altogether. One where they don't feel like a slave. That was a big theme I saw. Now, the sun in Libra also trines Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, which means that for this to happen, you have to up the evolution or up the vibration of your self-care. And I was thinking about you Scorpios. I was thinking Scorpios, Aquarius is their fourth house. Well, Scorpios always have really nice houses. They've always got very neat and tidy. It's comfortable. I feel safe there. But then I think to myself, wait a second. They're masters of boundaries. I should be like floating on a rock as they go to their porch. Like it should have like the most comfortable, most incredibly vibrant self-care shit because they know where everything needs care. So you ought to be giving yourself the Jetson home, honestly. And so if you don't have a Jetson home, you don't have Jetson care, you're not going to make it in the age of Aquarius. You've got to be treated. And I think to myself, what about Scorpios live in a burrow? Who wants to go in a burrow and hang out, right? Like it's time for a Scorpio to like be in a skyscraper, right? Climb up and live in some corner of a skyscraper. But that said, the bug itself needs to go higher, which you could say is the eagle. A lot of people think that the higher version of Scorpio is eagle. And I would say, okay, it's time to fly like an eagle. If you want to look at it that way, no longer live in a burrow underground, live up above, flying above everyone else and determining who is king of the skies. It'll be you or queen of the skies. So like I said, you've got to change the way you look at your daily reality. And last thing, you've got to change the way you respond to yourself. You don't respond to yourself with the appropriate boundaries to grow yourself into a superhuman. Your boundaries are all designed, and the way you respond to yourself is to like beat yourself up or motivate yourself to do the right thing for yourself. So it's like you literally will be mean to yourself, telling yourself to be nice. And so that negative reinforcement is so old school, so dark, age of darkness. It really is just at this point going to make you look old. So if you change the boundaries around what you will or won't do to yourself and for yourself, I think the entire Scorpio energy is going to bloom. And that means a new you in society, and it also means that a new daily life, one you like. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, this solar eclipse in Virgo for you is a huge investment in your legacy. And I would say I've always seen potential in Sagittarius, but I've never known what the hell you're going to do. And you don't either. You haven't had very much vision about it. You've sort of bounced around what worked and followed what you liked, but never a clear vision. I mean, for someone who understands storytelling and arcs and chapters and characters and international distribution, like, you have the mind to like reach everyone in the world, and yet you haven't. Why not? I've been so surprised. I think that's changing now. I think you're going to change your legacy. You're taking your career legacy to a whole nother level. All right. Now, the reason for all this has been the fact that you've had and been riddled with karma from your childhood. Sagittarius, more than no other sign, have got issues coming from the home. All right. That's either leaving home early at 16 or emancipating yourself, or, running away from home, or being adopted and finding your parents. Like, there's 1,000 billion stories I hear about Sagittarius, but it's never a good home. Your karma was, that's where all of your dark karma was stored, was in the home and family, and therefore your emotions. But now that Neptune has cleaned all that up, and so is Saturn, the dip back in Saturn says, okay, well, what does the good home mean? What is a home that you will have faith in? What is an emotional foundation that you will have faith in? And once you have this new faith in yourself and this new home, well, then that begs the question, have you been really trying your hardest in career when you came already from a bad home and started out late and behind and broke to begin with? That's it. But now you're not. So imagine if you had a great childhood and you got everything you wanted. Where would you be now? What would your career ambitions be in that case? That is what's compelling about this for Sagittarius. We're about to see the talented Sagittarius come out because they're deciding they're well cared for. They're a little bit bored. They want something exciting, most likely. So then the sun going to Libra says, all right, well, then your relationship to society is going to completely change. And that means you're going to have transformation of friends and location and social circles and where you hang out. That's all going to change. But it really begins with like what you expect out of yourself when you go out in society. What is it that you are expecting from yourself? Okay. That expectation of yourself is ultimately the first degree of Libra. And it's time to be a bit more fair. And that first expectation, most Sagittarius are giving more than they're receiving. In that very first impression, that very first moment, they will give more than they receive. Now, on the other side of this is really where the story is, and that is your self-love. You see, because you came from a bad home, your inner child was mostly rebellious and went a little too far and took unnecessary risk because you were trying to escape the fact you didn't feel well emotionally nurtured. And so this is natural. The inner child just wants to run away. But now if Neptune is 0 degrees Aries, you're going to go through a period where now your heart gets really what it wants, because after all, it's being raised by a person in a good home. And so those two together means that your personal dreams can come true. In other words, be who you want to be in society and go for it. All right. I think you absolutely can. Now, the other thing to be important about this is the trine to Pluto in Aquarius means that you're going to have to think differently if you're going to pull this off. You can't keep thinking and talking to yourself on the same level. You got to think like a 5D chessboard, looking at all these aspects of pleasing you and then perhaps pleasing the world. So a real transformation in the dimension in which you think. You're thinking in the wrong dimension. And then the square of Mars in Scorpio says something else. You have to also draw some lines around faith. You've got to decide you have faith in yourself and then bank on it. You can't go back and forth and move the line all the time. You can't allow that to be a moving, floating situation of having faith or not. Decide you have full faith, draw a boundary around that, and don't let any other part of you say that you don't have faith or question it again. And it's that wavering, do I have faith in myself or not, or wavering love or fear, and that ultimately seems to be the magic. You change the boundaries around faith, and the entire Sagittarius will bloom, particularly in career. Can't wait to see what you do. Capricorns, this solar eclipse for you is going to be in the purpose of life's purpose, okay? What are you here for anyways? And see, I think Capricorns have always had some visions, but most of those visions have been tied to power and control, honestly, and being an influence. And so those ambitions weren't necessarily because you really loved it. It was because you really wanted what came with it. And so you've always been a results-driven person and personality. As a result, you've gotten a lot of what you wanted, but at the same time, you haven't. You haven't lived your purpose. And so Capricorns now are ready to live their purpose, or make purpose their number one goal. Now, the reason why you couldn't get there was because you were riddled in the brain with mind games due to karma. You have had all sorts of intellectual games, communication games, games of, perhaps mental disease, and also, perhaps parents who had mental disease. Whatever the case has been, it's all about thinking and where you mess up with thinking and how you fall into, periods of guilt, and you fall into periods of sorrow in your mind. You let your mind get depressed really easily. This is all the karma of Capricorn in the third house of their mind. But now that your mind is on track and you've also learned to listen to spirit as the source of your ambition and also of your self-nurturing, now your beliefs can be followed. Now your mind will undo what you were trying to do. And now your mind will have faith, hopefully, in what those beliefs are. So it's a new day. That means that when the sun goes into Libra, it's a new day with self-criticism and self-direction. That you've been unfair to yourself when it comes to motivation. That your discipline is based on negative, probably sweatshop type of policies with yourself, where you are, demanding more, not caring about yourself whatsoever, and making decisions that really are based on the outer world goals, not based on inner world needs. Okay. Now, all this happens because you also have a new foundation when it comes to emotion. Part of the problem was that your childhood was an emotional warfare. There's a lot of conflict, not a lot of solidarity there. In some regards, very strong for you emotionally, but in other regards, very much ignoring who you are and what your needs are. And so it's now time to create a custom plan for how to treat your feelings. Having yourself feel good about who you are, feel good about your life, and feel good about your future. Feeling good overall allows you to make the right choices in society. The choices you made for yourself were based on not feeling greatest. And so then you went to the world to solve those problems instead of going directly to your feelings and nurturing yourself first. When you make decisions from a solid, good home and feeling good about yourself, then your whole potential really opens up. In fact, the sun trining Pluto in Aquarius says that it's also tied to your potential to make money. That your values of yourself are too one-dimensional. You're looking at the world too simply. You need more Crayola colors in your Crayola box. And so as a result, you are not really valuing yourself on these new dimensions and these new directions, this new real estate. And so you're missing out on these new real estate deals. So you must raise the vibration of what your values are. You must value yourself for areas that you had never even considered before. And this will open up your potential for your career strength and for you to live that life purpose. Last thing, the sun, Pluto squaring Scorpio means that for all this to happen energetically and for you to go forward, it means that you've got to change your personal boundaries when it comes to the world. You've been a bit of a snob in many ways, I have to say honestly, about who you deal with and who you won't deal with and who's on your level or not on your level. And really what that is you making certain boundaries with yourself. Why is it that you have to limit yourself for someone? Isn't there money to be made with everyone? Why would you stop to begin with or judge a person? Is it maybe that you don't feel secure yourself? You're going out there feeling insecure, and so you're only dealing with people that feel good to feel good with? See, this is where it's at. For Capricorns and Capricorn risings, it's all about your boundaries with yourself, putting yourself in the world. And I think like everyone else, you've been blaming the world when really it's your boundaries. Aquarius. Aquarius, this is going to be a powerful moment for you because this solar eclipse technically gives you the wizard's wand. You see, you've always had the ability to snap in and out of reality and to pull off miracles, but ironically so, you use Virgo, which is Earth, to establish where the boundary is drawn. And I think that Aquarius is, like all people, were confused about the way the New Age works. And so you sort of assume that if it was this boundary, then that is stuck and that's the way it is. You took Virgo a little too literally. You forgot the fact that you have the potential to actually make the Virgo move, all right? That you have the potential to make molecules and vibrations change and frequencies change. You are the wizards and you are the enchanters and enchantresses of the world. So this eclipse pretty much gives you the wand, saying you have the ability now to raise the vibration and the rules around every line. And when you have rules around the line, when you control the gate, you control the shape and the flow of all energy. Now, this is all due to the fact that you're finally over your self-worth issues. All of your karma establishes around self-worth. That you do not value yourself, or you get a family didn't value you, or father didn't recognize the talents in you, or all sorts of things. Always, saying to the world that this is the reason why I'm not being paid enough or not being paid attention to enough. It's all due to these karmic relationships. And even some Aquariuses have issues with making money because they have old past life church stuff there, where they think that if you make money, it makes you less holy. So it's just all kinds of subconscious crap around money and values and things like that. And because Aquariuses are so unique, I can come with a billion different examples of what that may mean. Well, here's the thing, though. It is over. As far as you've seen all the karma now. If you choose to replace it, continue it, that's your choice. But you know what you know, and that is it. And so if you now go forward with transforming your lifestyle the way you want, it will stay that way because your value system ought to be open now and intuitive about what's possible. Now, that brings us to the sun in Libra. If you no longer question where the line is or whether or not you're playing according to the rules, you kind of take that all out of the equation. That allows you to believe in yourself on a whole nother level. And that's what Sun in Libra is, that you're going to change the balance of believing in yourself. Truth be told, even though you act like know-it-alls with Aries in that place of thinking, you actually are very open to whether or not you're right or not. In fact, you usually assume that you're not, or at least you take that public opinion that, I don't know, maybe I don't know, but who knows? And you undermine your own belief in yourself probably for getting along. And it's probably a compensation you make because of how you can be such an asshole to yourself in your mind. You've had Aries that rules your thinking and your thoughts. And all of your thinking and all of your program thinking has been based on really being on the defensive over the dark ages because you were the weird ones and you were the ones attacked. And so your mind got kind of brutal and vicious. And because you're smart enough to not actually cause problems, you've really kept that war inside your head. A lot of warring Aquariuses in the head. And that's what's over. With Neptune at 0 degrees, you no longer have to have a war in your head. And not having a war in your head means that you can actually approach your belief in yourself in a balanced perspective. That you can give yourself, the credit or the benefit of the doubt that you're probably right and they're probably wrong. Now, the sun in Libra also means it trines to Pluto in Aquarius, your sign, which means that this change in your belief in yourself has got to coincide and be coordinated with the way you respond to yourself, period. Your response to yourself is on a low 3D level. You're not using 5D tactics to manage yourself in the 3D. And so as a result, your ego ends up having 3D reactions and keeping yourself in the 3D and manifesting more 3D things. In other words, you have the wand now, you have permission now, but you actually keep self-sabotaging yourself with the way you keep treating yourself. You're treating yourself like a, what's the word? I can't remember, like what they say has no magic in Harry Potter, when in fact you have the magic of Harry Potter. So this all comes down to one more thing, and that has to do with your personal boundaries, okay, in regard to what you will and won't do. You see, Mars in Scorpio squaring Pluto says there's a lot of things that you do for self-discipline. You get yourself going, you're self-motivated, and doing things differently. You do those things differently because you are really harsh and limited on how willing you are to be with yourself, giving yourself all kinds of opportunities for different ways of doing things, just very regimented. And if you make a decision, this means this. If you make a decision, that means that. And so because you've been so cold cutting when it comes to decisions and basically running your career like a dictator, you've kept yourself from having true, profound potential. And so basically what this says is if you change your boundaries around what you will and won't do or how to motivate yourself, then you will realize that you're not a muggle and you realize that you are in fact a wizard. And if that happens, then you can use this wand that the solar eclipse is giving you. I'm looking forward to seeing Aquarius come out of the closet and give themselves permission. Pisces, this solar eclipse in Virgo means that you are transforming your relationships and your approach to partnership forever. In fact, you're being given permission to actually push the envelope of what relationships can be. Now, you've always done that, frankly. You've always taken that liberty regardless, but now you actually have the back of the universe to now operate in relationship resolution that's higher than any of us understand. This is all due to the fact that you've been spending the last few years healing your ego. All your karma has come from ego, which means you've done the wrong thing or not gone far enough, or you've trespassed or you've been trespassed against and then retaliate, and whatever the case may be, falsely, put yourself out there, and then put yourself out there, then disappeared. I mean, there's a million different stories, but your karma has been literally your behavior, your ego, and your reputation. Now that that's healed, you are free to have the relationships you deserve, not the ones you deserve from karma, right? The ones you deserve from good behavior. Now, when the sun goes in Libra, that means that the whole theme shifts. And that shifts to now, where do you draw the boundary with yourself? You have Libra in the 8th house, which allows you to have very sensitive and, let's say, perfectly architected boundaries for other people. You can sculpt yourself immaculately to be shielded from someone or to help protect yourself on levels that we don't understand. But you've abused that flexibility and used it to your favor, mostly because of the Aries side of the equation, your values. Pisces have had very old school values. You have Aries that runs your 2nd house. So you've been operating from sort of caveman values, even though you have a spiritual connection to God. And so the result has been mostly a mess. But now with Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, it's now time to hold space for a whole new value system. You have the right to completely program your values as you see fit. And so therefore, since you have the strong values, where do you draw the line now? So having strong values means it's now time to base your line on your values, especially with how you value yourself in these first 3 days. Now, the sun in Libra also trines Pluto in Aquarius, which means in order for this to happen, you've got to increase the resolution to God in consciousness. That although you are aware of God in spirit, and although you can talk to dead people and maybe feel the vibration of a baby and know what it wants, you actually have not turned on or tuned in to your higher self at all. And so Pisces are way behind. Although they have the spiritual reputation, they're really not plugged in. They're really not listening at all. So this means increasing your flexibility in your dimensions of faith. You've got faith in yourself in many dimensions, in many different places, and hold that faith all the time, which keeps you connected to spirit. Now, at the same time, we have, of course, this square, and the square has to go to Scorpio, all right? The square to Scorpio means that you're going to have to change your boundaries around what you believe in. Pisces have always been really stubborn and obstinate about what they believe in. They'll sit there and listen to anybody. Oh, they can deal with anyone's belief structure. They don't care. But you try to change this, Pisces? Hell no. The world is wrong. And you've been very arrogant, frankly, on the outside looking in, about sometimes when you're calling me wrong, when the reality is that you've chosen this stubborn boundary, when there's billions of people on the planet that haven't, right? So when you become flexible with why you do not believe in yourself, okay, why you can believe in yourself, what you can consider, not consider, it's that boundary of believing in yourself that'll make this whole Pisces new version of yourself bloom. And I wouldn't actually take any risk in relationships until you firmly believe in yourself and you've got a boundary around it. Well, friends, that's all we have for this week's Namaste Today with Soul Horoscopes and your Zodiac weather. It's been a pleasure to be of service. And incidentally, I have a new thing coming out, a little webinar coming up that you might be interested in. It is called the New World Order, spelled K-N-E-W. This will be a one-day workshop where I'll talk about the events and the transformation of society that will happen between now and February or March. And also in the workshop, help you with your chart to discover what your timeline is and when you have to do your ego makeover. to put yourself on the wait list and get an email when it's ready for sale, come to newworldorder.xyz. Newworldorder.xyz. Why XYZ? Those are generations, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. They're going to actually face this order and make it happen. That said, thank you so much for watching. You can always catch us on our Facebook club, by the way, siriusjoy.club. You can also find us at siriusjoy.social with our link tree. And we thank everyone who's involved every week, but you're really only scratching the surface if you're not at siriusjoy.com. Come to siriusjoy.com, and for $3.99, I will walk with you and go so deep you won't be able to handle it. Give it a try. Can't wait to see you there. Until next time, I love you. Live, love, be.
Coming up next week on Serious Joy TV. Join Sensei Christopher Witecki and psychic medium Scott Cruz for another Leading Out Loud this Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Then join us for Astro Mingle on Friday night for an illuminating conversation with Alexis Arden, co-founder of Soul's Way Practice. The best in enlightened entertainment, only on Serious Joy TV.